So last video we added a single transaction here just to show you how to get your register started, and then between recordings I added in a second transaction just sort of for good measure to help give a little more context to what I'm about to show you here. And if you read the write-up, and hopefully you did, if you didn't and you're on YouTube, check the description. You'll see a link over to the write-up so that you can understand what I'm talking about. Same for Vimeo. If you're on Vimeo, check the description for a link so you can access the write-up. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Vimeo, Twitter, all that good stuff, because I plan on putting a lot more content out like this. So if you like what you're about to see here, and if you like what you've seen previously, then it's probably a good idea to subscribe, follow, do whatever is appropriate given wherever you are. Now, let's see what we need to do here. So I identified in the write-up there are certain things that we want to create lists for so that we can choose from a drop-down. It saves time and eliminates errors in data entry like typos, right? So that we can be sure that things are consistent. So one thing is going to be the transaction type. Let's identify the columns that we want to create lists for right now. So we'll just kind of format them a little differently for a minute. And then I can copy the formatting. So the transaction type is one. We're going to create a product or service list. The paid from accounts and the name type. Oops, I clicked on the wrong thing. Oh, it worked. Name type, the category, and the category type. Right, so these are the lists that we want to create. So now let's create a tab here called lists. Lists. And then I'll just start one column in. Let's go back to the register, and we're going to copy that. And we're going to copy all of these. Okay, transaction types. So far, what do we have? We have a check and a debit card, right? So let's put those in. Check, debit card. What else could we have? We could have an invoice. We could have a customer payment. We'll just call it a payment from a customer. And we can have a bill and a bill payment, right, for the accounts payable side. Let's start there. And here's what we're going to do for each of these lists. I'm going to click and drag. And let's leave some space. And I'll explain why we're going to leave some space. Because we're going to define the range here. We're going to define the list. And if you want to add things in, and if I don't leave space, you can, and you try and insert at the last line, it doesn't work. It won't include the new stuff that you enter. So you always want to leave one extra line, a little bit of room there, right? And so we'll go to data, and we're going to say named ranges, and we're going to call this transaction type. It doesn't like the range name. I think you can't have spaces. There we go. That worked. So use the underscore. So products or services list. So right now we're talking about startups, using the example kind of a software developer. You may really not have any product or services. This would be the things that you sell, right? The things that you have to offer for sale. So if you have an application, really it would just be app sales, right? Or you might have different sort of plans. So you might describe it in terms of the plans, like you have a basic and a medium level plan and a gold plan or whatever it is. So that might be what you would include here. So for now, we'll just put app sales on there. The paid from account, so we'll have main checking. And if you're doing this in a real situation, what I would encourage you to do is name these based on the actual, say, bank account that you use. So if you're banking with, let's say, Wells Fargo, then just put Wells Fargo in the last few digits of the account number. And if you have a credit card, maybe you'll put like a Capital One credit card. And no, this is not sponsored by Capital One. So we'll use those two. And then the name would be the names of the payees. So we have a few examples already. Let's go back to the register, and we have the names, Staples and Best Buy. Let's go back to lists. Staples and Best Buy. And these are both vendors. And actually, this one was going to work a little differently because we have a pretty fixed list of different types of names. What do we have? Customers, vendors, employees, and maybe owners or investors or something like that, right? So let's actually go to data, and we're going to go to validation. All right, and then we're going to do a list of items. We separate them by a comma. So we have vendor. Let's do customer first. then vendor, then owner, and let's leave it at that. So now it creates a little drop down so you can choose, right? So we're going to say Staples is a vendor, Best Buy, and I need to copy down the validation. So let's just copy and paste. It copies and pastes everything, but this way we just get the validation in there. So we have our name types now set up. And then the category, now we have to think of our expense categories. And a good place to go to start those is if we go back to the business model. Here we have the categories that we started to create, like, right? Rent, salaries, computer equipment, all that good stuff. So let's start with those. So now the only two columns that kind of go together here are the name and the name type, right? Everything else is sort of independent of one another. So it might look confusing because we have this stuff, kind of in a line together, but these are really separate lists. So it might help to get that visual if we just insert columns so that it's very clear that these sort of stand alone, right? Insert one left. And we'll just shrink these down. So column width, resize column. Let's just make this 20. Highlight each of these. Control Y normally repeats the action. Doesn't work in this case. 20. But you can copy and paste to get that effect. Now these two do live together. This one I'll copy and paste. And then the category and category type also are going to kind of live together. So these are all expenses, right? So again, we want to do something like what we did here. So I'll just copy and paste that, but then we'll go to data and validation. And it's a different list. The category types, what do we have? Expenses. Let's do it kind of in order. So start with the balance sheet. Asset. Liability, equity, then we have revenue and expenses. And save that. So these are all going to be expenses. Right? Now how far did we go with this range? Let's go to transaction type. And let's say we want to edit this. I want to just make everything go down to line 25. That way we've defined sort of one place across the board that this all sort of goes to. All right, so let's do this. Let's go to View, freeze one row so I can see what's going on above. And we'll just black out this whole row so I know that's kind of where things end. We need to create this product or services list. So again, we're going to highlight the whole range, data, and named ranges. And this is product underscore services. Product and services. Let's fix that here too. All right, the paid from account. Also data, named range, paid underscore from, done, name, data, named ranges, name. Then we have name type, copy that down to here. Data, named ranges, name, type. Almost there. Category. Notice I did it directly from here this time once it's highlighted. And then we have the category type. Boom. Now for the magic. So that's all there. Great thing about Google Sheets is it's already saved. I don't have to worry about saving it, right? Let's copy these down. And let's do something here. I'm going to make the font on this white. And I just want to copy this across. And what that does is it makes it stop. So if I'm in here and I want to get to the bottom, Control down arrow stops me there instead of taking me all the way down to the bottom of the spreadsheet. So it's helpful. Now, for the last part of today's video, how to get this to work in here, right? So you actually already saw an example of this where we did it where we had a static list, right? Where I just manually put in the list choices. But now I want this to be the transaction type. So we're going to go to data validation and we're going to do a list, but we're going to use the name. So transaction type is going to be just that. It's going to be transaction type. So list from a range. And you just want to make sure it's spelled exactly right. So transaction. Let's see if I can add it like this. Maybe not. And we'll say save. Okay, and once I establish the transaction type coming from the list transaction type, here it is. So notice I have everything I need to choose from. So transaction type, of course I don't want to choose the actual transaction type name. So this was a check, right? Now let's copy this down for a minute. This is a debit card. And then we can actually copy down. Let's just go down to like row 30 and paste special and just the data validation, right? So that's just going to give me my drop down. So here we've now established that we have an end line of 30 in the range. So let's go like so. Copy that across. And while we're at it, now that we've defined which ones we needed to create lists for, let's just make it into a nice header by color coding it all. And I actually like the way that looks better when it's not bold. So now let's finish setting up all the other drop downs. So we had the product or service list over here. Data validation. And you can copy and paste it in that way. So you can go over here to edit it just so you can grab the name and save it. Now let's go back to the register. And now our products and services list has a drop down. And you can leave it blank. Remember, we only had the one app sale so far. Now let's deal with the paid from account. And then we'll do the VLOOKUP to grab the, we'll do the name, and then we'll do the VLOOKUP to grab the name type. And the same thing happens on the category. So the paid from account, again, we got this range and data validation. I like this way of doing it too because it makes it less likely that I'll have a typo when I'm setting this up and be wondering later why it didn't work, right? So I just copy that over back to the register because when I select it over here, it takes me over to the list. So it takes me away from this. So this will be, well, notice it gives me a little data validation error if I try and put something in there that's not included in the list, which is great. Let's get the names in there. Data validation. Name, copy that, save, back to the register, right, and that's working. Staples and Best Buy. Perfect. Now the name type we're going to look up. So simple VLOOKUP formula equals VLOOKUP. Look for whatever's to my left, comma. Look for it here in lists. Let's go down to the bottom. And if you find a match, give me whatever's in the second column. So that's a comma 2. And then we do comma false, which means if you don't find a match, if you don't find that exact match, then I want to see an error message there, essentially. Right, so now this is automatic. As soon as I choose a name, it's going to give me the name type. I'll copy that formula down. And then we have an NA. So we can fix that with a little if-then formula. So I go inside here and say, if the cell to my left equals quote, quote, which means if it's blank, then just put nothing in there, quote, quote. Otherwise, do the VLOOKUP. Real simple. And then we need a set of parentheses on the outside of that. So this way, it just keeps it looking nice and clean, but the second I choose something, it should give me a result, except that it's not. And I'll tell you why. Because I forgot before I copied this formula down to hold certain things constant. So we're looking at J2, whatever's to my left, but then this range needs to be constant. So H1 through I25 needs to be constant. And then I can copy that down. And then I can say if whatever's to my left equals quote, quote, then quote, quote. Otherwise, do the VLOOKUP. So we're basically saying if whatever's to my left is blank, then leave this one blank. Otherwise, perform the VLOOKUP operation. Let's paste that down, and now it's nice and clean. And so if I delete that, my vendor goes away. And we're going to do the same thing here with the category. So first, we're going to go to data validation, and then we're going to take from here the category, save that back to the register, and that takes care of that. So that's all in place. And you can reorder these. If you go in here to lists and you reorder these, in case you have different categories, you'll want to sort them together. But I can go to data and sort range by column K, A through Z. And that way it puts them in alphabetical order. Having it in alphabetical order here, we'll leave it in alphabetical order here, which is perfect. And now it doesn't like my office supplies because I didn't have office supplies that I carried over from the budget. So when you get that error, that means we've got to add a new account. We need office supplies in here. So let's add that in. So we'll add in one here. Easiest thing to do is just copy and paste this down to make the space. Right, and that's also going to be an expense. And now when I come back here, there's no longer an error because it recognizes it. If I come over here, there it is in its proper order. And so now this works, and now we have to build the if-then logic into this. So let's, again, see how that works. But first, let's not make the same mistake twice. I need that range from K2 to L25 to be constant, so I'm putting $ in front of the letter and the number so that the rows and the columns in the range remain constant as I copy it down. Otherwise, what happens is it updates the referencing. If I copy to the right or left, it updates the column. If I copy up or down, it updates the row number. And I don't want it to do that. I want it to be looking always in the exact same static range. So first we fix that. Then we go in and build the if-then logic. So I click right in between the equals and the VLOOKUP. Equals if, open parentheses, click to my left, whatever's to my left. If whatever's to my left equals blank with quote, quote, then give me a blank. Otherwise, do the VLOOKUP. And then click all the way on the outside and close that to wrap it all into one nice, big, gorgeous formula. And then always test these things to make sure they work. So as soon as I pick something, it should come up with its appropriate type. And when I delete it, it goes away. Now, my friends, you have the structure laid out. This is a 20-minute video. I should have charged for this. But you have the structure laid out here for how to make your data entry really automated, really easy. Because again, now a lot of your data entry is going to be made simple by simply choosing from a dropdown rather than having to key things in. And if I mistype debit or card, then when I do a report later, I want to see all my debit card transactions, it's not going to work. I'm going to be missing important information. So this, my friends, is how you get your accounting system built. We've basically just built an accounting system. And what I'm going to do for the next video, which you'll see perhaps in another week or so, is I'm going to build in a reporting module, and we're going to use pivot tables. and you're going to see pivot table. A lot of people think, oh my God, pivot tables, that's over my head. It's too complicated. It's not. I promise you're going to show you just how easy it is. We've built the infrastructure, and now we need to build the reporting module in, and that's what the pivot tables really are. It's how you build your reports. So I'm going to drop some sample data in here. I'll probably take it out of a QuickBooks desktop sample file just to make it easy to have, so we have a lot of data to work with. And then I'm going to show you, I'll fill that in here, and then I'm going to show you how we build the reports to to really make this into a complete accounting package. And the beautiful thing about this, especially since it's in the series here, Accounting for Startups, is it didn't cost a thing. It did not cost you one dime to build this, other than the time. And as far as the time goes, I've given you the blueprint for how to do it. And of course, you can always click in the link provided in the post wherever you happen to see this. Make sure if you're not on SethDavid.com, click over to SethDavid.com, and you'll find the link in the write-up where you can get a copy of this template and just choose File, Make a Copy. This way you don't have to redo all the work. You can just kind of take this off of my shelf, so to speak, and get to work. So as always, if you have any questions, you know where to reach me, Seth@nerdenterprises.com, or use one of those gorgeous little contact forms that we provide for you on both SethDavid.com or nerdenterprises.com. As always, I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day. I hope you got some real value out of this. I know it's a long video, but I like to think I packed a lot of really good and useful information for you into it. And of course, don't forget that if you do need some extra help from me, just visit me on the web in the places I already mentioned, SethDavid.com or nerdenterprises.com, or just go over to schoolofanswers.com and book a session with me. I would love to work with you one-on-one. I love working with startups. I love working with anybody who needs help and who just, if you're hungry for the help, let me help you shorten the learning curve. Let me help you get this done nice and efficiently so that you can stay focused on what you do best, which I assume is not the accounting. As always, I hope you had some fun and learned something along the way. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you on the web.